My name is Aine Crilly from the HR Elephant based in Newry here in Northern Ireland. I'm delighted to be co-hosting the session this evening with Adrian Markey. We're going to be discussing all things advice and employment in terms of the epidemic with COVID-19, and we'll be looking at guidance for both employers and employees. Adrian, if you just want to introduce yourself there as well.
Hi folks, I'm Adrian Markey. I'm a chartered accountant based in Warrenpoint. Just over this last few weeks, myself and Anya have been in pretty much constant contact, bouncing queries off each other from self-employed people, from business owners and employees as well, just to find out what help and support is out there for businesses and everyone else during these sort of uncertain times that we're facing. Pretty much an unprecedented event in everybody's lives, but particularly for businesses, when businesses are being forced to shut their doors out of nothing, it can be very difficult to see what the next step is from there. So hopefully this bit of a session, we can give you a walkthrough on what some of those next steps are and how you can take advantage of the support that's out there from the government.
Okay, that's great. I think fundamentally we're still all trying to make the adjustment and understand how the world has changed basically overnight and over the past few days and weeks. There's been so many changes in terms of how we live, work, even right down to how we communicate. So overnight everything's now virtual, and essentially that takes time to adjust and settle into a new routine, as well as trying to make our way through what these changes mean and how we can actually implement them. So Adrian, how have you found the new environment? Has there been challenges for you and for your business?
Yeah, well, my business is strange because my business is helping other businesses. So when other businesses are finding it hard, I'm typically finding it hard as well. But typically your accountant, your lawyer, and of course your HR consultant are the people that you turn to when things aren't going right. Mm-hmm. So I've been very, very busy, but it's not really been an enjoyable busy. It's been trying to help people again see what those next steps are. What do they do? When things first started going bad and it looked like places were starting to shut, and some places started to shut voluntarily, mm-hmm. they were being told to. I was feeling phone calls from business owners who their staff didn't want to come into work for mm-hmm. fear of their own safety, just as things were really starting to ramp up in the news and the dangers of this were becoming apparent, and it was very clear that, look, it's here, this is starting to happen. So a lot of difficult phone calls, a lot of difficult decisions, and it took a while. It was maybe a week or 2 weeks after that before some of the support that's available started to come to business owners. Mm-hmm. Once that started coming out, things settled a little bit. It's calmer, I find, this week with clients. I don't know if you're finding that yourself, Anya, but people kind of know what they're doing now, which for most of them is sitting at home and plotting and planning their return, or trying to see where their money is coming from to pay and to pay suppliers, and to hopefully, fingers crossed, the vast majority of those businesses get to open their doors again in the next few weeks or months ahead.
I think probably with yourself, myself, certainly health and safety and legal, it's been a really challenging time because we are on the front line and we are wanting to help all the businesses, and obviously and it's great to be busy, but it's not a nice busy in these circumstances, of course. So again, probably like yourself, I've been working early mornings and late nights, seeing sunrise and sunset. But I mean, in terms of the pandemic, it's really crisis management, and it's hard for people to understand and to let go if they've never been through a recession or any type of pandemic, like most of us never have been. Mm-hmm. And again, the thing that's fundamental to this is the sense of community with the business environment. Probably like yourself, I'm torturing you to the extent of messages and phone calls and what I do here and what I do there. But it really is a time for people to put the people at the heart of their business as well, because again, without the people, they don't have a business, you know.
And for the most part, I've definitely seen that. That's been one of the encouraging things. Mm-hmm. I had a client I was speaking to last week who shut his doors 3 weeks ago now, maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
Okay.
The week after he shut his doors, had the sort of final pay slips there for the staff, because at that point he just thought he was closing. There was no any schemes or anything, and a couple of the staff came in and basically said to him, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about the wages." We still forced them onto him, but that was the staff trying to help the employer, which is nice to see. And I think I always come from the approach that, you know, there's a very good quote actually that Simon Sinek said. I don't know if you follow Simon. He talked about something similar in a business that was facing downsizing and job cuts and that, and the plan that the CEO came up with was that everybody takes 4 weeks unpaid leave, because better we all suffer a little and anyone suffers a lot. Mm-hmm. I thought that was kind of good, and it's kind of reflective of what I'm certainly seeing with that employee-employer relationship, or customer-supplier relationship as well. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a lot of suppliers talking to clients of mine, basically, and landlords as well, saying, "Listen, if you close the doors, don't worry about the rent. We'll sort it out one way or another, whether that's a discount or something free." But yeah, there's for the most part, there's a kindness, I think, at the minute, and an understanding, because this is something brand new. We've never been here before, so we'll all sort of chip in and face it together.
Yeah, and I think it is. It's a time where things like that do stand out, and you'll always remember, because, you know, ultimately with HR, I would always advocate, you know, you mightn't remember the incident, you mightn't remember what actually happened, but you'll remember how somebody made you feel. So, you know, if everybody is standing together on it, it's again similar to the employees being left in the dark. If the employer is, you know, oh dear, what am I actually going to do? You know, communicate with the employees, let them know what's happening. Even if they've no idea, at least you know what your plan of action is, or what you're going to try and do, you know.
Yeah, over communicate. I think tell them everything, every step, because we all know there's nothing worse than being left in uncertainty. And even if the only update is there are no updates,
yes,
I think that's a bit of help as well, you know.
Yeah, at least they've been told something. So probably we'll look at what are we actually going to look at in this session this evening then, Adrian?
Yeah, so for the most part, in terms of what I've been dealing with, certainly it's self-employed people, it's employers and employees, and then businesses in general. There are certain packages of support out there for business in general. But we'll maybe talk about the self-employed first, because they were left to the last by the Chancellor. We maybe put them in first. Yeah. So this was pretty well documented, I suppose, when it was announced, basically because everyone knew it was coming, because nothing had been forthcoming to that point in terms of support for the self-employed. And even before it was announced, I think everybody kind of had an idea of what was going to be happening for them. So for self-employed people, there's an 80% grant, and it's 80% based on your average monthly taxable earnings over the last 3 tax years. So there's still a little bit of uncertainty on what that figure means. My understanding of taxable profits is before capital allowances, which was something I was a bit concerned about. Very often you'll have businesses that are, you know, self-employed people. Take a brickie, for example, who's up and down the road to Dublin every day, and he's making 40 grand a year, but he bought a new van at 35. So in his tax return, his taxable profits are going to say £5,000, but really it was 40. It was just he's getting a certain type of tax relief to bring his tax bill down. So I think, I'm not willing to guarantee yet, but I think it's going to be based off the pre-capital allowances figure anyway. So that's going to be based off the last 3 years tax returns. If you don't have 3 years tax returns, it'll go from the date that you started trading up until the end of the 18-19 tax year, which you should have submitted already. But if you haven't, you have until the 23rd of April to get that in. It's only a couple of weeks to pull that together. I would imagine anyone that's only putting their tax return in now might have very high earnings figures on there, in the knowledge that they're going to get 80% of that as their grant. There's a couple of things in the tail with this grant. The first being that if you're newly self-employed, as in you started self-employment anytime from this just over a year ago, the 6th of April 2019, qualify for this. And we'll come back to what's going to happen to those individuals in a minute. The other sting in the tail, well, there's a couple then. If the majority of your income has to be from self-employment, and your trading profits have to be below £50,000. So again, if it's using that same term, trading profits, good from the sense that you'll add back the capital allowances before you work out what 80% of it is, but bad from the perspective of if you add back the capital allowances, that might push you over the 50,000. But I think for most people, I think what's median earnings in Northern Ireland is probably in around the £23,000 mark. So I think a lot of self-employed people are going to be thereabouts and are going to qualify for this. Okay. The final sting in the tail is timing. This grant's being administered by HMRC, who I usually have very little nice to say about them. I have a few to say about them during this session, but they're notoriously slow when it comes to anything IT. Look up Making Tax Digital, for example. That was a long, drawn-out thing that's still drawn out and brought in over a number of years. But the thinking on this is it's going to be early June. Before anyone's getting a payment for that, at which stage you're looking at 3 months payments at 80%, and then that's pretty much at the minute. That's as long as the scheme's going to run, is to June.
And what way would that work, Adrian, with, now obviously we're in April and that's going to be administered in June. So in that short term, is there anything that self-employed individuals can apply for to tie them over?
Yeah, I mean, the defaults are going to be Universal Credit or the New Style Job Seekers Allowance. It's difficult to tell anyone what they're going to get on that, because I think with Universal Credit it comes down to household earnings as much as anything. But I think the approach that most people are taking is apply. I think if you fill out the questionnaire online, it does tell you. I think you fill in the questionnaire online and then you get an email. Later, and that gives you a date that they're going to tell you how much you're going to get, and then a date that you're going to get it. In between all that, I think there's 1 or 2 phone interviews that you have to do. It used to be that you would go into the job centre and bring in all your documentation and ID and that, but they're from that obviously at the minute. Aside from that, depending on the type of trade and the size of it, it might be worth at least looking at some forms of finance. The main one that is being talked about is the business interruption loan scheme. It's being talked about for a few different reasons, some good and some bad. Good from the point of view that there's a loan fund there being administered by the British Business Bank, which will see loans. Your high street bank should be able to give a business loan at what is effectively 0% interest for 12 months. The criticism of the scheme, though, is that the banks aren't really playing, not that they're not playing ball with this, but look, you have to go through the same assessment criteria as if you're just going for any other loan. But additionally, some of the banks are guiding people towards other products, which are obviously going to be more in the favour of the bank. Some banks, none of the big 4 now, but some of the banks are looking for personal guarantees and security and different things like that. Depending on your circumstances, the government's underwriting the loans and providing sort of 80% guarantees on them. So that's something. The other thing as well, and I talked about this last week, actually, we done another session like this on you. Local credit unions, I know the credit union here in Warren Point are very, very keen to help people. And I say that very purposefully because I spoke to the branch manager, and it was quite refreshing to hear someone who's a manager of what's in effect kind of like a bank to help rather than to sell a product. Very much, and especially if you're self-employed, and especially if you have a relationship with a credit union or a bank and you need that bit of short-term finance to get you through, they're the people to talk to. You'll get a lot further talking to people than filling out forms online and ringing help.
Yeah, no, 100%. I definitely agree. And tell me, in terms of, a husband and wife, or, two people living together, is there a cap in terms of if they're both self-employed? Does that 50,000 then apply to both people? Are they both able to claim from that scheme, or what way?
No, it's totally. Is this now? You cut off a bit there when you were speaking. Is this a husband and wife situation or a partnership?
Yeah, so in terms of, husband and wife, or, any type of civil partnership where, mother and father are living in the house together, are they still both able to claim for that scheme with the threshold?
They'll still apply, and those thresholds will apply to each individually, yeah.
Okay, brilliant, no problem.
So it's something, it is, I mean, this was talked about at the time it was announced, it is a very difficult set of people to provide support to in a fair and equitable way, just because there's so many variations.
Yes.
Even I think we probably all know somebody that is a full-time shop assistant but a farmer on the weekends, or is flogging stuff on eBay, or as a sideline. So that's where they had to sort of bring in the thing to say the majority of your income from self-employment, what you'd essentially have is lots and lots of micro claims that go down the process and make it difficult for those that really need it, that were dependent on that self-employed income to get it,
Okay, so essentially those self-employed individuals now do have an extra window that has been granted to them to get their assessment in for last year as such?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 18-19 tax year, which should have been filed 31st of January, but as is the way with, there's always stragglers.
Yes. Like myself. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
So and then on that as well, you don't have to do anything. It's HMRC. It's a strange wording actually. HMRC are going to contact people who are eligible and invite them to apply. I imagine that phone call or no, it'll probably be a letter from HMRC. When you're invited to apply, there'll be some kind of screening, or you'll have to tick a box to say that, look, yes, my business has been adversely affected by COVID-19 and being shut down or whatever. But I think it's going to be relatively soft touch. I don't think they want to, with any of the measures, I don't think the government or HMRC or whoever's administering them is trying to not put money in people's pockets. They kind of want it to be very accessible.
Okay, well, that's great. That's really helpful.
Super. So where are we at then? So we have to talk about employees and employers, and this is your sort of area of expertise. How are you finding that with business owners? And I suppose you're liaising with employees a lot as well, and talking about those concerns that they might have.
Yeah, so in the nature of our role, fundamentally we serve two purposes. So obviously to advise and signpost the employer, but then again being there for the employee. So we've had lots of different situations over the past number of weeks where, I would say 90% of the employers are very much worried, they're concerned, they just really don't know what to do. So it's, how do I access schemes? What is a layoff? What is redundancy? What do I do for short-time working? What even is furlough? Because it's such an American term we've never ever had here before. It's very much the unknown. So, what are the options? And again, then for employees, fundamentally, work is everything. So when that's taken away from us overnight, what do we do? Again, they talk about cash is king. So when wages stop and income ceases, how do we then, even exist? It's very, very stressful. You talk about mental health. This is such a difficult time, especially when you bring into the mix working from home, and you look at that in maybe a complex situation at home where individuals have an unhealthy relationship, or getting to work is so purposeful. So taking that away and putting that person back in that home, it creates lots of different divisions, and that brings it back to the workplace as well. So it's challenging. Again, there's lots of options out there. It's just about knowing what those options are. Employers, probably like yourself, Adrian, are saying, what do we do? What can we do? And it's just about advising and signposting them to the options available. So again, with the scheme that came in overnight with the furlough, or the proper name of the coronavirus job retention scheme, what does that even mean? So there's guidance there, and again, a bit like this session, everything is guidance, but we don't have very black and white answers. It's very much up to interpretation and lots of grey areas. So we can do our best to signpost, but until there's probably test cases and there is different scenarios that is applicable to your business, it's very much wait and see, trial and error. So it's about getting that balance right. Again, a massive area with furlough leave, with the job retention scheme, is annual leave. So that's your forte there. So what do we do with that? Can people have annual leave and furlough leave? Lots of different things. And then we look at SSP, sickness. We look at somebody on maternity and carers leave, and you're just bringing in a whole mix of different scenarios that you've never ever experienced or dealt with. So we definitely have had long days, but we just want to make sure the employers and the employees are both minded and looked after as far as reasonably possible.
Yeah. So for employees and anyone watching this that's been told that they're going on to furlough leave with their employer, what does that mean, and what's that gonna change for them in terms of money and in terms of their relationship with their employer?
Okay, so essentially what furlough means without all the gobbledygook is it's a temporary leave of absence. It's never a term that we have been familiar with. It keeps people on their payroll. So essentially, you're still accruing all your normal benefits, as such as your annual leave and whatnot. You're being laid off, and it's not without pay. Essentially, you're not being made redundant. So I think that's the difference. Where people have maybe in the last few weeks laid staff off without a payment, and then this scheme has kicked in, and it's okay. Well, can we utilise this scheme now? I'm not sure, Adrian, if you've got some of those questions, but perhaps somebody has laid off a few members of staff, and then this scheme has come out thereafter. What can they do? So again, it's about having that opportunity or ability to backdate that payment. I think the most important thing is to do it like anything else with HR, with employment, to do it fairly and consistently. So if, for instance, we've had questions to say, well, Anya, can we furlough 6 members of staff, but we still need 4 members of staff? As long as you have a business case, as long as you have a selection matrix like redundancy, layoff, or short-time working, that you make it quite clear why those people are key workers, or why they're essential to your business. So if you look at somebody that maybe does payroll, or somebody that does accounts or invoicing, you would look at that as an essential measure maybe in a business. Or if that's maybe something the director in the short term can look after. In terms of operationally on the ground, we have a number of clients that have operatives that are on the ground, maybe looking after some of the key areas, like the utilities, like water, electric and whatnot, and they have to have a certain amount of staff readily available to deal with those crises or those incidents. So it's just about being fair and consistent. And if anybody came retrospectively and looked at why did you select 6 people out of 10, that you would have a business case, or you would have details there to outline that.
Yeah. Here's one for you now. If there was a business there with, say, a group of 10 employees all doing the same job, could the business in that sense furlough half and keep half on, or would they be expected to just cut 10 people's hours? Or again, does seniority and things like that maybe come into it as well?
So different things can come into it. So like, for instance, years of service. So a number of clients have used that. So, they're keeping on their staff that's been longest serving. And those then are the key workers, and the ones that are furloughed are the ones that have been there lesser time. When you bring in different scenarios like performance, like transferable skills, absences, anything like that, that all can be looked at to, again, form a table, form a score and a matrix, and then you can utilise that. The other option is furlough is able to be rotated. So if you have 10 staff, you need to keep 5. You can, have 5 on for 3 weeks, and then you can rotate the other 5, that it's fair and consistent. Again, when you look at it with the number of shielded workers, with those family members at home that need to be shielded, ask people like redundancy to volunteer volunteer for furlough. So, you know, if it's furlough, furlough, sorry, my wording is not 100%, but, you know,
I've been saying furlough.
Yeah, it's hard to know, but you know, given that person or given that employee the responsibility to say, well, look, I'm putting my hand up here. You know, I have somebody at home that is, you know, 12 weeks of shielding. I want to be at home with them. I want to protect them. Again, the employer has a duty of care there. So, given the person the opportunity to volunteer, so you know, they could be maybe pregnant, and you know, you could have a risk assessment there to either, for medical reasons, put them off on furlough, or to then ask them, did they want to be furloughed? Yeah. Again, if they're on sick pay, they can't be furloughed until they return from that period. So it's just about, you know, having a common sense approach to it, and not, you know, going in all guns blazing and thinking, right, you know, I'm getting rid of X, Y, and Z. It's not an opportunity to get rid of somebody that you don't want to be in the business either. So I think you just need to be really careful about, you know, how you do make the decision. Have a business case there, like anything else in life that you would do, and then you would use that thereafter. Again, if you don't have a layoff clause in the contract, you do need to get consent for the employee to agree to be furloughed. So realistically, you know, what are your options as a business, right? Well, if you don't go on furlough leave, you're going to be made redundant, or you're going to actually just be laid off without pay because we cannot pay you. And again, with redundancy, I don't actually have any money to pay you, so you know, you're going to have to claim off the insurance, and that could be 6 months. So any employee is very cooperative that I've worked with to say, yes, I put my hands up 100%, that's great. And even if the business is struggling, and perhaps you've got experience of this, you know, the employee has agreed, well, you know, I'm okay until you get paid, so we can defer that payment. I'm not expecting my wage weekly or monthly, but you know, I am now going to agree that the deferred payment will be made when you get paid, you know. So just about being the test of a reasonable man or woman is to be used at all times. And I think a lot of people are maybe confused as to who they can furlough. I was speaking to a retailer during the week, and they said, Aine, the group that they are under the umbrella with, they had essentially said, no, look, their understanding of furlough was they only could furlough everybody. They can't just furlough sections. So, for instance, that this person's deli had shut. So, of course, they didn't have work operationally wise. There was no work there for them, but they were told by, you know, the group that essentially couldn't furlough, you know, maybe 2 or 3 people. They had to furlough 10. So they were like, can we not furlough just 2 or 3 people? So it's just about getting that communication. Look, there's loads of resources online. There's loads of information, but I think it's just really mixed messages. It's coming from so many different sources, and people are confused. You know, I'm confused, and I'm looking at it every single day, and I'm sure, you know,
there's that many different cases and variations of it as well. And to be fair, the government website has been updated again in the last few days with a lot more detail on those sort of specific things. You know, questions about, can directors be furloughed, and apprentices, and what can and can't you do whilst you're being furloughed? Can you work for the company? Can you carry out training? Things like that. So what should an employee expect then? Their employer said, right, you're off on furlough. They're off. They're not allowed to work. Is that right?
Yeah. So different clients have been taking different approaches to the fact if they work from laptops, they have been taking the laptop back, and you know, in terms of locking out people from their email addresses. I think it's just because the boundaries are so unclear. It's what can I or can I not be doing? Similar to directors, you know, can they only do their statutory duties, or can they actually, you know, be working on their business development? So if they're working at all, that is not agreed. I've had a number of people say, well, you know, surely they're getting 80%, they can do 2 days work. Effectively, they can't. And as much as that would be great, you know, you're either working or you're not. So we've had clients who have reduced the employees down, you know, with the short time working, in terms of they've reduced their hours from 5 days to 2 days, you know, and essentially if they need someone there to do that role, well, then they need to have short time, and essentially furlough doesn't work for that reason. So it's a scheme that it's great in essence, but it cannot be subject to abuse either. Otherwise, you know, everybody doesn't benefit, you know.
Yeah, you can't shoehorn it in. It's the right tool for the right job if you're just working hours. we'll keep somebody there who you need as a key worker, even if it is 2 days a week instead of the 5 that they used to do, then that's the tool for that. Whereas if you need to shut a department or an office, well then those staff can be furloughed. And it's a zero cost mechanism for the business for the most part, subject to there's a £2,500 ceiling on it per employee per month. So anyone that was earning below that will pretty much get all their 80% of their salary paid, and the scheme will cover the employer's national insurance and the employer's pension contributions as well. And then anyone who's on over that 2,500, well, over 2,500 is the 80%. So if they're 3,000 odd a month, they're going to notice a bit of a sharper cut in their salaries. But it's effectively, from an employer's point of view, there's no cost to it. It's really just a cash flow issue, because they're going to have to pay the wages potentially from backdated to the start of March up until, I reckon it's going to be late April, early May before any grants are being paid out on this. So that's the pinch point, I think, at the minute for a lot of the businesses is financing 2 months worth of wages until such time as the government pays it back.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then, we did get some clarity over the weekend in terms of, there was that whole uncertainty if, I have job one and I'm furloughed, if I then now apply for a new job. So for instance, for the likes of Iceland, Asda, Tesco's, delivery drivers, absolutely crying out for people. Retail is booming in that end of essential supplies. So I know myself, I tried to get a Tesco click and collect, and it's like 3 weeks in advance. So the employer or the employee can certainly, go then and get that second job. So in effect, they can be getting, 180% of their salary as such. So, there is that consideration when, in essence, the whole point of furlough is to keep people at home and to stop. Again, when you look at frontline workers and those in retail and NHS and whatever, they still need more people. So, what can you do? So there's still that with the furlough, that you are able to take on a new role and still be furloughed, as long as it's not in direct competition with employer number one, and as long as they agree and have been made aware, if that clause is within your contract, that that they're happy. For instance, we had a business development manager at the end of last week say, obviously their salary in London had been reduced significantly, maybe something like 50%, even with that cap of 2,500, and they're out now delivery driving, because the company obviously didn't have a direct competition, and there was no clause that prohibited them from doing so. So they're out there making or trying to make up that additional income as well.
Yeah, brilliant. So from the employer's point of view, or from either's point of view, it's the employer's choice who gets furloughed, whether they're furloughed. But as you say, the employee can put their hand up for it, but the employer doesn't necessarily have to use the scheme either. No. And again, in terms of cash flow, there is a number of clients, I'm sure maybe that you have some similar, Adrian, that have said, they put their hands up early when this started, maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and said, these guys are laid off, we can't. And even when the scheme came out and maybe the employee did request, well, look, could you try that scheme? They've said, it's just, we don't have cash flow, we're in negative here, we cannot facilitate the scheme. So, yes, what is your other options for employers, for employees? Certainly as an employee, you can request to be placed on furlough leave if your employer maybe doesn't know about the scheme or doesn't have interest or doesn't even know what to do, because essentially sometimes it's, how do I even get on that scheme? So, even yesterday with our newsletter, we pulled it down into 6 steps. So, what do I actually need to do? I think a big part of it is getting it in writing. So again, the government has stipulated over the weekend and updated their guidance that you need to keep a written record of the consent of the employee for 5 years. So it's not just as simple as, right, everybody's furloughed, see you later. It's very much
number one, making the employee aware. So, anybody that we've been working with, either the line managers or the directors, have been talking to them, especially when other employees have maybe been key workers or being kept in the business, just as a general communication and clarity, like, just to let you know, tomorrow or, next week or whatever it is, the period of furlough is going to be implemented. And I would appreciate that as an employee, that, people have had the chance to actually sort of take that in, instead of being hit with a HR email to say, by the way, you're being furloughed by next week, and sure, we'll see you later,
And just with the timeline of things as well. I mean, I know I had a few clients that closed and everyone was basically told, listen, you're on the temporary layoff. And it was after that then that the furlough scheme came out. So there was a bit of a clamor then to go back to those employees and say, look, this is now what we're going to do now that this is available. One thing that came up a few times then is that in that interim period between being put on temporary layoff and then the job retention scheme coming up, a lot of people then did as what anyone would do, is on the universal credit, on the benefits and all the rest. So if anyone's in that situation that they've claimed benefits and then been told that they're going to be on furlough, you need to keep in touch with universal credit and update them every week if you have to, and what your earnings are, because one thing that can and will happen, and it used to happen all the time with the old tax credit system, was that they will continue to overpay you, and in a year's time you'll get a letter saying you owe us $2,000. Can you write us a check, please? And so just it's far easier to deal with if you just update them all the time. And I think actually with the universal credit now, there are like monthly check-ins and questionnaire things that you have to do just to keep that all up to date.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's easier to end a claim now than down the line when we think everything's really good and being hit with, a few £1,000 of a bill. It's just, it's never nice, so it's about being realistic in this situation too,
Yeah, definitely keep on top of it. So that's self-employed people and employees and employers. There's definitely support out there, and that'll cover millions and millions of people getting sort of around 80% of the earnings that they'd always got, give or take. And yes, bar some people falling through the cracks on both sides with the self-employed people. I mean, we talked about the newly self-employed that aren't going to get it. With the furlough scheme, with anyone that's just started a new job in March, that's going to be difficult because you were supposed to be on, you only qualify for the furlough if you're on somebody's payroll on the 28th of February. You can go back to your previous employer, is that right?
Yeah.
Back on the payroll, but is that only if they laid you off, or is that say you left and went to a new job, regardless of coronavirus or anything? That was your plan. Is that still happening?
Yeah, so you can go back and probably Martin Lewis has went full circle on this with the government, but I think what he certainly advocated for last week was pushing the boundaries to say, okay, you said you can, but can you put that in writing? So they very much wrote that in over the weekend. So 28th of February very much is the cutoff point that you needed to be on the payroll to be furloughed. So, for instance, we have clients that had employees start 2nd, 3rd of March. What they have done in that instance is they've put them onto short time working. So they've reduced some of their days from 5 to 2. And then, that employee as such here can then maybe look to see what other universal credits or what tax credits they may be entitled to. Again, because that is based on household, it's very hard for us to say you're going to receive X, Y, or Z,
Yeah.
So I think for anybody that was previously employed and they had been terminated on that payroll, you can certainly ask the employer, but I think the employer is definitely not required. Yeah, and I think that's the difference, because a number of people said, well, I've asked and said no, but essentially, if that person had left for a new role, unless you had a really good relationship with the employer, it'd be quite difficult to then maybe take that person on, and then you have the consideration of you're going to be building up on redundancy payouts and whatnot. So maybe you've timelines there of you're overtaking your 2-year period with the company and whatnot. So there's lots of different considerations both for the employer and the employee look at in that respect, you know.
Yeah, I never thought. I've just thought of it there now. They'll be building up annual leave whilst they're on furlough for their old employer, essentially. So, what about then? We'll maybe move on to the poor business owners in all this, because I think that I know from speaking to them, these are the people that have been fretting the most. I know, nobody's really had it easy. Anyone that's had to go on furlough, or any self-employed people out there, but the people that are running their businesses, I'm sure you had questions in your own head about how the next few months was gonna go for the HR elephant. I certainly had questions at one stage or another. A few of them put to bed, I think, by some of the support that did come out.
Yes.
So I'll maybe cover off some of that, because there's quite a lot. Some of this as well, very specific to Northern Ireland. The first thing I think that came out was actually the rates relief, which was surprising, because we never seem to get any sort of a break on our rates, and especially not the business rates either. So there's a 25% discount on next year's rates bill. And the calendar, if you're paying by direct debit over the 9 months, the calendar for that has now been shifted forward 3 months. So you don't really have to start paying your rates until you'll pay July or June to March, or June to February, rather than March to January as it was previously. So a bit of a discount and a bit of a cash flow advantage in that. And domestic rates aren't reduced, but they are being shifted onto that same calendar as well. So again, a bit more help for anyone who's paying their own domestic rates, whether you're, that'll certainly help if you are on 80% pay, whether through the self-employed grant or the furlough scheme.
I think as well, when you're talking, probably, Adrian, and you pointed this out last week, somebody on our call had asked about how they actually are going to provide wages for employees. So, if you then do get that sum of £10,000, certainly as a small business owner, that would be so important and essential in providing income. So again, that's a means of not having to take out loans or credit unions or whatnot. Yeah.
So that was it. So that was the next thing then, was after the discount on the rates based on your rateable value of your business is the £10,000 grant. A lot of people should have got that already if they were either paying by direct debit or had filled out the form online. Find the link to the form on NA Business Info website. Most people now either should have got that or should have got an email to say that the payment's on the way. If you haven't, there's a phone number on the same link that you fill out the form on, that you can ring them and just check, look, is this in the queue or is it not? If it is, sit tight. If it's not, fill out the form again. It'll do no harm. They definitely won't pay you twice, but anyway.
And tell me, see for people, for instance, that are in shared office spaces and whatnot, like I know for ourselves, we have our own office similar to yourselves, but is there an opportunity down the line for them to perhaps to apply for any help from the LTS?
So there was a query as well, and I had a few clients that were asking about it, that, look, I pay £200 a month for my room. I don't have rates in my name. And a few weeks ago, I thought, well, look, the landlord's going to be cashing in there then. But there has been an update to the guidance saying that landlords aren't going to get this grant. It's not the intention of it, and it's not how they want that to happen. So what's going to happen, anyone who's in that situation, you're going to have to wait a little bit longer. A secondary application process, another website being put together where you can apply and get what I think will be the same £10,000 grant if you're in a premises that meets those requirements, the less than £15,000 of NAV, and you're getting the small business rates relief then on your rates bill. Again, wait and see. I have no idea how long that's going to be. I would like to think this month. I wouldn't like anyone who's in that situation. You wouldn't want them to be waiting much longer than that, because potentially they've already been closed a month at this stage. Or 2 or 3 weeks at least. So that'll be a big help, and as you say, that'll be the catalyst to financing the furlough scheme, or to keeping some of your bills up to date, because yes, your mortgage company will give you a break on your repayments, your bank will, and HP providers will give you a holiday on payments, etc. But my fear for some businesses is that they take all these holidays for loans, HP, electric, or everything, and then in 3 or 5 or 7 months' time, when things are back to normal, they have a huge hill to climb. So my advice to clients certainly is, look, if you feel like you need that breathing space on those things, by all means take it, but only take what you need, because it still has to be paid at some stage. You don't want to be giving yourself too much of a mountain to climb on the other side of this mountain, essentially. The other big grant then is the one for the businesses in the retail, hospitality and tourism section. It's £25,000. We are still waiting on more details of that. The last I heard was maybe 4 or 5 days ago. It was 2 weeks away. So we're probably looking at the middle of April. I imagine that means it'll be the middle of April. You'll be able to apply, and probably towards the end of April then you'll be getting money. But that'll be a big help. So that's anyone in retail, hospitality or tourism industries with a premises, and the NAV of that premises between £15,000 and £51,000. So dig out last year's rates bill. It'll tell you your NAV on there, and if it's between 15 and 51,000, there's a £25,000 grant coming, because those are typically the ones. If you think of your coffee shop with 20 employees, that's the type of size of business that we're looking at there. So those are the ones that, if you've 20 employees, each earning £200 or £300 a week, that's a big wage bill. That's a couple of grand every week going out in wages. So that 25 is going to help finance that and keep up to date with rent and rates and pay last quarter's electric bill and all the rest, whilst we sort of get through this and wait when they get back open, And is
that a blanket? So that's a blanket grant for anybody within those industries or sectors?
Pretty much. If you've that slightly bigger premises, then yes. The reason that it's taken until now is because it's very easy for the rates agency to identify businesses with an NAV, who got the small business rates relief. It's harder for them to then narrow it by sector. I'm not even sure how they're doing it, but they're doing it. They're working through it at the minute. So on that one, sit tight. I think actually, well, it's all right saying this in hindsight, but it might have actually been an idea to give those businesses the 10 grand.
Yeah, to start with.
With 15, because the 10's coming through now, that would see you through. But again, it's probably the same issue of trying to narrow it by sector. That's proven the hard point. So maybe that wasn't viable at all. But it's unfortunate, but it's coming. I think that's the silver lining, is that it's on its way at least.
And that is, at least I think it's because there's so much unknown with, again, I received an email myself as a business on Friday from, the HMRC to say, look, we will be in touch, and we've received, and if everything's in order, you'll get your grant or whatnot. But again, it's the unknown of when is it actually coming. So for those bigger businesses that do have wages that are building up week on week and whatever, it's hard to know when that comes, but hopefully that'll be soon rather than later. In terms of, somebody had asked me about this yesterday, and again, finances aren't my thing at all, Adrian, so I'll put it back to you. With VAT deferrals, what's the story with that?
So yes, with VAT, anyone that has a VAT payment due, when is it? So between the 20th of March and the 30th of June, if you would have had a VAT bill to pay in that time period, you now don't have to pay it until the 31st of March next year. Okay, brilliant. It's a bit of breathing space. I mean, for example, I filed a VAT return today for a claim that was £6,000, and when we looked at it then, we thought, right, well, they could pay it now. They had the money in the bank to pay it now, but they potentially not having money to pay staff on the furlough scheme over the next couple of weeks. Yeah. Well, what, £500 a month over the next 12 months is a lot more manageable to them, and even paying it for the next few months until we get through this. At least then that they're over the worst of it, and it's just an ease on cash flow. And there's a few things like that then. So for self-employed people, then there's a deferral of the July payment on account. So normally if you're filling out a tax return and your tax bill's over £1,000, HMRC want payments on account, which means you pay your full tax bill in January plus 50%. You pay another 50% in July, and the idea being then that going into the next year, you've paid ahead of yourself. So essentially, they're not making you make your July payment, and instead pushing it back to January, which will fall in with your regular filing then anyway. So it may be people that there is nothing to pay anyway. Once you do update your tax return in January, you might have been in a position where you'll be getting a refund, but by not making the July payment, you're just all square. But you'll not know until you get that tax return away. 2 days into the new tax year, so you can do last year's tax return anytime now. Anyone that's sitting at home in self-isolation can dig out the bank statement. Get on it,
Okay, no, that's really helpful. Again, it's just being made aware of those different schemes or helps or deferrals that are there in the short term. That
for any HMRC taxes, there's a what they call a business payment support line that you can bring, and any debt that you owe them, it's just a way of arranging to put it onto a DD. Normally, they don't. In the past, they didn't usually like going over 6 months, but I think being pretty flexible now with anyone to sort of say, look, I need a bit of breathing space in this, and if it means spreading it over 12 months to bring the repayments down to a level that you can sustain, I think they'll go for that.
Yeah.
Again, it's just freeing up cash. It's just putting yourself in a position to prioritize where your money's going, because the last thing you want is for direct debits be hitting your bank and wiping you out money that you had in your head earmarked for staff. So I think one of the things I know a lot of clients are doing this is cancelling direct debits. Now, it's not to default on payment. It's basically to say, I now want to decide with the money that is in my account where I'm going to deploy that, whether it's to finance those furloughed wages or, the landlord kicking me out if I don't pay the rent. So, right, I'm going to do that one. So it's prioritizing, and this will be the first time I think for a lot of people that they've maybe looked at exactly what comes out of their bank all the time as well, because I'm sure there's a lot of small direct debits there that could be £200 or £300 or £400 or £500 over a month that I don't notice before, but at the minute I think it's just about being on top of every pound and every penny.
It really is, and I think something that I'm never good with finance anyway, but even Shane and myself at the weekend, I think it's something like £250 coming out of account with insurance, which is just mental. And, you're actually thinking 4 or 5 different direct debits. What are they actually for? And you've no idea. So, when you do come on the other side of this and you look at every cloud with a silver lining, people getting a better understanding of their finances, because we've never been catapulted into that situation where we even know what we have. Like, what do we spend on a weekly basis? Now a lot of us are spending very little because we're not running in, for me anyway, and you're running to deli lights or, 10, £20 here, there, everywhere. You're having to make your own meals. You're having to think, where are you actually putting that amount of money? So I think there'll definitely be great learnings in terms of personally and business wise, what you're actually doing with your money. So that's good news for accountants anyway.
There we go. In terms of anything else, aside from what we've talked about, I mean, it's relatively minor things. Statutory sick pay has been updated for, I think everyone knew, but that was one of the first measures to come out, that statutory sick pay was payable from day one for employees who are having to self-isolate. Again, with much of the support that's been offered, it's going to be relatively soft touch in that it's not going to come under huge scrutiny. I don't mean that as a way to, you're getting away with it, but they're not expecting people to run to the doctors to get a sick note, for example, to say that they should self-isolate. There's kind of self-certification things like that there we can do. That was one of the first measures to come out. So if you didn't know, statutory sick pay usually only started from day 4, whereas now it's being paid from day 1. Again, it's £95 a week. It's better than nothing, and also that's now being refunded to the employer as well. Years ago, it always was a refundable payment. The government would have always paid that back to the employer. But I remember George Osborne very, very sneakily through one of the budgets that it was no longer refunded, and he never mentioned it in his speech, but he got it in there. And I remember reading through the budget document the next day and going, oh, missed that one. So it's a return to the old times when they did used to pay it back.
It's still a bit of content with a lot of employers that they have to pay SSP, so.
Oh no, I know it was it, but I think it's just when anyone now that I tell that, statutory sick pay isn't refundable, they don't blink twice at it, whereas I think it's just the people that knew the times when it was refundable, when it changed. I hate it, But as well as that, Aine, I don't know if this has come up with you very much, but there were changes to holidays. So employees were only ever allowed to carry, 5 days holidays by legislation, but they've relaxed that a little bit now, haven't they?
Yes. And how many days is that at the moment then? What was the new legislation on that?
So I think it was previously, because I remember reading up on it about a year ago, at a maximum, employees could carry 5 days holidays into the new holiday calendar, whatever the calendar was. The employer decides what the holiday calendar is. Whereas now, just because they know that people are going to be off, sitting at home, either self-isolating or on furlough or whatever, they're still building up holiday leave, but they're not getting to take it because they're on furlough. So they're allowing employees to carry 4 weeks holidays into the next 2 leave years. So I don't know if that means all your holidays from this year can be split over the next 2, or just carried 1 year and then the same next year. But I suppose it's basically a reassurance to staff that, look, you're not getting to take your holidays, but you'll get them.
Yeah.
More than anything. Anything else? I think I've covered, near enough everything that's been brought up. Have you had any? What have been your sort of bugbears? Not bugbears, but the big problems that clients have been coming to you with over the last few weeks?
I think something that I have certainly found to be very irritating and discriminatory to a certain level has been those employers and clients and employees that are actually pregnant. So they're one of the vulnerable sectors as such. So anybody over 70 or with the noted health conditions or pregnant. So vulnerable employees as such have been advised to either stay at home. So Boris Johnson had given out the declaration one evening that, right, you need to be off now for 12 weeks. So again, employers scrambled. And what should you be doing in that circumstance? Nobody really knew, because it was we've been given a directive here by government, and those employees now need to go and go home. And essentially, if they can't work from home, if they're working in retail, cashier, whatever it is, they can't work from home. But the bugbear for me was that these employees were then being told that they were only going to receive SSP. So if they actually weren't pregnant, they would still be working. So I find that very irritating, because in terms of being fair and reasonable, that certainly wasn't. If that person had been risk assessed like any other situation normally in the workplace, then they would have been put off on full pay. So I find that very challenging to work with clients or on project work, just to let them know we actually cannot be paying somebody SSP, because that's discrimination in itself, because that person only actually is being put off because they're pregnant. So in terms of the Equality Commission and those factors, we cannot look at that. So I think that for people was very difficult, again with those that are shielding those individuals in the vulnerable group that are being placed in 12 weeks. There's lots of uncertainty in and around what they should and should not get. Should they be paid SSP for 12 weeks? Well, if you're furloughing individuals, and if you're doing that within the workforce, can you do that, or would it be reasonable to furlough those members of the workforce? Of course it would. You're protecting them, so you're not discriminating discriminating against those individuals. So, you know, if you have a number of members of the workforce that are over 70, if they're pregnant, or they have any type of even respiratory or any type of illness, you know, asthma, I think a number of people had showed concerns about, and look, again, the serious illnesses, that you're actually showing them a duty of care by indicating that you want to furlough those to protect, you know, the employee and then to protect the business as well. So I don't think that would be unreasonable, or that would be discrimination in itself to do so. But again, just to be careful with any selection, that there is fair and reasonableness with it. Again, with parents that have children, anybody with care and responsibilities, you've all those factors that come in under the HR umbrella. So, you know, what are you doing in that instance? You know, have they maybe accrued a number of weeks annual leave? Is it reasonable for you to sit down and let them use their annual leave? You know, are they going to use parental leave, carers leave, whatever you've built into the company? Is there any enhancements that you can work together on without just saying to them, well, actually, no, you just have to go and take a period of unpaid leave? And maybe that person is living month to month or week to week, and that's not really reasonable to do. Again, today, you know, I've heard of an employer who has essentially laid everybody off at the end of March, hasn't essentially laid them off, just told them there's no more work. And when the employee had questioned, you know, what's happening here, you know, the employer doesn't know, so they don't know, and there's no communication with the employee at all, or with the rest of the workforce, and it's very much, you know, breaking that relationship. Again, it's all about putting the people and the employees at the heart of the business, because that's so important, just to keep them updated as to what's happening. So just about being a human being at the end of the day, and being realistic is my approach for it. But there's loads of different scenarios based with each client that you're looking at differently. So, you know, for instance, if somebody's on maternity at the moment and they want to return to work, they're thinking, well, you know, my workplace is closed. What am I going to do for a job? But if everybody else is furloughed, then essentially, you know, reaching out to your employer and asking them, you know, what is the plan for me to return to work on the 1st of May? And obviously the workplace is now closed. You know, what's the plan for me? Can I be furloughed from my return to work date? You know, just about getting a clear structure in place for that person when they're coming back, that they don't think they're coming back to no job. So it's all those different boundaries, you know, to work on with employers. We're learning as we go along every day. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we've kind of come full circle there, because I think we started talking at the start about the good side of humanity that this crisis sort of brought out, you know, people working together. And I think we're back talking about that again. I think the employee-employer relationship, I'm always of the opinion that you're going to spend 40 or so hours a week or more working in a job. You have to enjoy it. And as an employer, my approach has always been, I want you to enjoy it. I want you to enjoy being here, because then you become a good advocate for the firm, and you do better work. So one of my things is always trying to make the workplace one that people want to be in, and to operate in a way that people can get behind and believe in. Because I think trying to do people out of something they're entitled to that isn't going to cost you anything as an employer, it's a bit sickening in the times that's in it. I always think if you're good to people, they'll be good back to you, you know, and doing the right thing is always the right thing. You know, so that's how I always approach it. So yes, there's always going to be that ugly side to business, and the stereotypical, you know, evil CEO type that people always think of when they think of business. But for the most part, and definitely in Northern Ireland, we're a country of small businesses that are at the hearts of local communities, and they need to operate with that heart, you know.
I think you know, yes, we're being preventative, but we're also planning. So it's not about, you know, shutting the doors and screaming at the staff to say, we're shut, that's it, away home, and I've nothing coming in, and you're going to get nothing. You're being calm, you're being the leader, you're doing what you can, and as I always say, you're protecting the staff as far as reasonably possible. Again, if you have the resources there to do so, and if you don't, just explain that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of uncertainty ahead. I think. I hope we've maybe provided some clarity in as much as we know about what's going to happen over the next few weeks and months. There's still a lot of things undecided, particularly with that furlough scheme, the mechanics of it, how it's actually going to work, in terms of making the claim, we still don't know, but that'll all come out of the woodwork in good time. So yeah, I hope anyone that's watching this, we've helped. If you have any questions, if anyone has any questions for you, Anya, how can they get in touch with you?
So if you want to email me, my email address is anya@thehrelephant.com, or we're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, the HR Elephant, and we're happy to help. If anybody's any queries, I'm sure you're going to share your details there as well then, Adrian.
Yeah, look, Google Adrian Markey and you'll find me on every social network going at Adrian Markey. Or if there's a contact form on the website, or email info@adrianmarkey.com. And again, and I'm sure you've had a lot of this over the last few weeks as well, don't be afraid to send an email and ask a question, or pick up the phone and ask a question. We're not going to send you a bill for 500 quid. We'll have a 5 or 10 or 20 minute conversation, and I'd rather help somebody for free than they didn't get the help that they needed. So please do get in touch if there's any clarifications or anything we didn't answer that we missed that you need a bit of help with. By all means, I'm certainly happy to field those questions, and I'm sure Anya is as well.
Yeah, no, happy to help for sure. Thanks very much, everybody.
Cool. Right, we'll sign off there then and be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect.
Thanks.